Welcome back to another episode of the Untitled Football Podcast, coming every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. in the morning, where we review all the games using advanced analytics. And a little bit of betting and fantasy sprinkled in here and there, but it's not the main focus of the podcast. But we're here for the week number 7 preview and predictions and picks and all that type of stuff. So yeah, let's get right into it, starting with the first game. There's a Thursday night game this week that probably doesn't deserve to be on primetime, but it's on Thursday nonetheless. The New York Giants versus the Eagles on Thursday night, primetime game. Both of these teams don't deserve to be on primetime. Two terrible teams. Well, to be fair, the Eagles have been relatively respectable for the past couple of weeks at least versus the Steelers and the Ravens, where they didn't play terribly. And the Giants got a win, but, it's not like they played too well. Washington just sucks. So, yeah. The line for this game, 4.5. I think I might have said that already, but the line for this game is 4.5. Eagles are favorite coming into the game. I don't even want to talk about this game for that long, but, in reality, though, this game has some big NFC East implications, because what is the Giants' record? What is the Eagles' record? 1-4-1, right? Which means that if they win, they take the lead of the division, and the Giants could actually take the lead of the division. Well, I don't think they take the lead, but the Giants could actually, because they lost to the Cowboys, which the Cowboys have the tiebreaker in that situation, so they move themselves up to second if Dallas doesn't beat Washington. But if Dallas beats Washington, then Washington could be first in the division. This division is awful. And the fact that one of these teams will host a playoff game is crazy. But, yeah, not like it's going to matter too much. The only difference would be weather. And the only difference now would be weather. But, yeah. And the weather is a huge factor, actually. The weather's probably a bigger factor than the crowd noise itself. If you're a dome team playing outside in the cold during the playoffs, I think that's actually makes a bigger difference than crowd noise, but I'm not on the field, so I don't know. But yeah, let's talk about this actual game. I don't even want to talk about it like that, so I might do a little quick thing. The Giants suck. The Eagles suck too, but they're a bit better. They looked respectable against some pretty good teams. The Giants, I don't think they're that good though, but no one thinks they're good, but they're bad. The Eagles are also bad, but I think they're just a better team than the Giants overall. There's no area in which the Giants are better at. Actually, now that I think about it, there might actually be a couple. I think the Giants have a better overall receiver core than the Eagles potentially, especially with the Eagles guys injured. Carson Wentz still the least accurate quarterback, though that might have changed a little bit. But I don't know how much it would have changed. He's down 31st in adjusted completion percentage in the NFL with a 70.5, which is actually a really, really low mark. He's still one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. But it's gotten better than what it was earlier in the season. He's actually been fine. He's never been the most accurate quarterback in the world. So this isn't really surprising that he's not accurate right now. But the level of inaccuracy he reached this season was on another level. It was bad. So at least he's creating big plays, but that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. Why? Because John Hightower's dropping passes, Miles Sanders is dropping passes, and they're actually letting Wentz down to a certain extent. Wentz played 2 pretty good games, but had a touchdown drop against the Steelers, a touchdown drop against the Ravens, and I don't know if that John Hightower play would have went for a touchdown, but a John Hightower drop, there's some pretty significant drops that have actually led to them losing some games. Now, I don't think the Giants will keep it that close, so that might not be a factor. One drop might not be a factor, but it could be again. But yeah, I think the Eagles win and cover 4.5 as well. So yeah, this week also has some pretty interesting lines, I think, and some pretty interesting movement in the lines. No, I don't have the movement in the lines because my iPad blanked out and I don't have the access to the screenshot I took of the look ahead line. And yeah, so let's go to the next game though. That's all I want to talk about, the Eagles and Giants. I actually spent a long time on them after I said I wouldn't. Next game, Green Bay versus Houston. The Green Bay Packers are coming into this game favored by 3.5 points after coming off of an absolute thrashing from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Texans coming off a pretty respectable loss against the Titans. But, you know, I don't think they're a better team than the Packers. Like, the Packers really took a beating against the Bucs. But the Bucs' defense is one of the best in the league, and it manifested itself there. I mean, Rodgers was kind of the architect of his own pressure in that game to a certain extent, but like, yeah, he was the architect of his pressure to a certain extent, but at the same time, the offensive line wasn't that great. Bakhtiari got injured. I'm not 100% sure if he's coming back this week or not, but he could not be, and that's that's a huge loss. But because the Texans still have J.J. Watt, who hasn't had a spectacular season like he did last year. Like last year, J.J. Watt was amazing, but this year, J.J. Watt hasn't been nearly as good as he was last year. Like he's been okay, but he hasn't been J.J. Watt. Like, there's a world in which they could sell him and get a pretty good haul for a player that's, I don't want to say a shell of his former self, but someone who's definitely having a bad season right now. I mean, you could bank on someone that's been that good his whole career in J.J. Watt to bounce back and be good again, but I think you can if I were the GM for the Texans, I don't know, because if I were the GM for the Texans or like the owner for the Texans, I mean, you really can't get rid of him. He is your ticket selling guy if you look at it from that standpoint. But looking at it from a normal, just like the best player, like the most popular and like best player in franchise history, maybe outside. I mean, they traded D-Hop, but the GM for that trade isn't there anymore, Mr. Bill O'Brien. But I have it doesn't look like Bakhtiari is. Oh no, he is. He's questionable for Week 7 versus Houston. Well, that could be a big loss, though. The Texans pass rush hasn't been that good, and their coverage unit's even worse. So I'm gonna go with Green Bay to win this game because like Aaron Rodgers, up until he played the Bucs, was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. He looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers. Now, granted, everything in that stretch basically dissipated itself in the what? Is that even the right word? I don't know. It all disappeared against the Bucs, as he had a 2.4. He had a 2.4 average snap to pass, which ended up skyrocketing up to like damn near 3. And the rhythmic passing and going down the field at the same time, getting the ball out quickly and down the field at the same time, that wasn't happening anymore against the Bucs. Now, I don't think the Texans can force that out of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, so I'm going to go with the Packers to win and cover 3.5. So, yeah, but let's get on to the next game, though. Now we have Detroit versus Atlanta. Now, I was actually able to find the look-ahead lines for this week. And coming before the week, the look ahead was 1 point going to Atlanta. Atlanta still favored it, but now it's 2.5. At some places at 2. I mean, Atlanta looked really, really they looked really good against the Vikings, and the Lions looked pretty decent against the Jags. Deployed a really run-heavy attack versus them and ended up winning the game. But, damn. I mean, Atlanta, I don't know, man. Atlanta's pretty good at their best. And that was close to Atlanta at their best. Now, half of that could be due to the fact that they played up against, the Vikings defense that's been pretty shit the whole year. But like I said last podcast, I don't think really, no, there's like 2 or 3 teams that actually have a good defense in the NFL right now. So chalking stuff up to defense really isn't something that should be done. Like there's a lot of teams in the NFL right now that I think don't really have a good defense. So yeah, like more than half the league doesn't really have a good defense. Like there's teams that have these scattered good defensive performances, but nobody's consistent week to week, which is why you shouldn't rely on defense week to week and why it doesn't really matter as much as people might think it does. Anyway, though, you have the Detroit versus Atlanta. Atlanta's, I think, is a better team at their best, like I said earlier. But I also think Detroit might be a better team than the Vikings. I mean, I thought they were preseason, which might not be true anymore. It might be actually still. It's not like the Vikings have been good. The Lions, though, I don't know. No, I've backed Atlanta in every game. I almost backed the Vikings, and then I just quietly whispered Atlanta. They end up winning the game. Do I really want to back them again and go through the heartbreak again? Maybe not, but I don't think I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything conclusive about the Atlanta Falcons. They're the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the day. Like even when they got up huge against the Vikings, you still have that thought in the back of your mind that they're going to let this one go too. Ended up not happening though. Oh man, I'm going to go with Atlanta. By me backing them every week, they should be like 7-0 right now. They're not. I mean, they could be like what, 3-4. Like I think they are fundamentally maybe better than their record, because at least like I don't know, because those second half performances are really really bad, and their defense is like one of the worst in the league. Which at that point you are a major problem and hindrance to your team. But I'm gonna go with Atlanta to win this game and cover against Detroit. Now we have the storied rivalry, Dallas versus Washington Redskins, or the not-so-storied rivalry. It's just not the same anymore, man. It's not Redskins-Cowboys anymore. It's just not the same anymore. But we have Washington versus Dallas nonetheless. Washington comes into this game as 1-point underdogs versus Dallas. The look ahead for this game was 4.5 after Washington lost to the Giants and not playing well for most of that game except for like maybe a drive. The line went down to 3.5, and then after Dallas played against the Cardinals and got killed in a way that I didn't think they would coming into that game, it's gotten all the way down to 1 point. Now, I hate looking at things like this. Never mind, I'm not going to say it because it wouldn't have made sense. But Washington is better in no way to Dallas. Like I said, I went through this in the last podcast. Actually, I think Dallas is still a better team at literally every position on the field. Whilst, because like you look at the rosters from top to bottom. You look at how they match up with each other too. I think Dallas is still better. Washington, their strong suit is their defense that actually hasn't been good, minus like one game in the season. They were pretty good against the Giants, too, but they gave up 30 points in all but 2 of their games. Like, they don't have a good defense, but like I said earlier, every team has a bad defense for the most part, so it is what it is. If you have a bad offense, though, you're pretty much done in the pandemic NFL, because no one plays defense at any level of football anymore, so If you can't score points, you're probably gonna look better than you would typically, but you're still dead to rights because you just can't put up points, and that's Washington's situation right now. Dallas has probably worse defense than Washington, but like Washington also has nothing to like other than Terry McLaurin to even worry about on offense. So it won't matter. Their defense probably won't look good, but it might look better than it has all season. Now, I said that when they went up against the Giants too, but I think Washington's also worse than the Giants, offensively at least. But, I mean, you could say they're just better because they beat them, but, I don't like looking at it that way because that's not necessarily true. Though the Giants are probably better than the Washington team. If you look at them, I caught myself. I almost said the R word. If you look at their teams top to bottom, like I think the Giants are better in almost every area, and Dallas is way better than Washington in almost every area, except for they might be just better in every area. That being said, I think the narrative of the Dallas Cowboys will be overplayed coming into the week, like how much they need Dak. I mean, they played a really bad game plan. Not nonetheless a bad game. Like, they played a bad game plan and executed a bad game plan poorly. So, what happened? They got trounced. Now, they couldn't go into that disadvantageous game plan of try to give the ball to Zeke 50 times and then put Andy Dalton in 3rd and 9s, which I don't trust him to dig me out of. Like, if you have Dak, I still don't trust him to dig me. I don't trust too many quarterbacks in the NFL at all to consistently drag me out of 3rd and longs. So that's why you don't run the ball on early downs. And that's how they got down early in that game. And if they come out and do the same thing, I don't think Washington could put up points in the same way that Arizona can. But, I mean, Arizona's offense isn't good either. They put up 38. Mainly because of, like, 2 plays in the game. Like, they really weren't that good on offense, especially passing. I mean, running the ball, they were fine, I guess. And, I mean, the Cardinals got a ton of pressure, and Washington has a better overall defensive front than Arizona. Has. But, I mean, that's the only way I think Washington has a chance in this game, is if they get pressure at a really high rate. So, that being said, I'm going to go with Dallas. Because I don't see that scenario happening. And, I mean, yeah, I just don't see that scenario happening. Because, like, Washington, I mean, they're okay, I guess. Like, I mean, their pass rush probably hasn't really been fully as advertised. I mean, they've had really good games, like against the Eagles. I think overall in the season, though, it might not be as good as people might have expected it to be coming into the season. But, like, yeah, because looking at the pressure numbers, Jared Goff versus Washington was under pressure the lowest amount of any player in the NFL that week at 9%. And then you go to the week prior to that, Lamar Jackson under pressure, pretty low amount. Like, their pass rush unit hasn't been as good as maybe people would like to believe because they have all first-round picks there. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Dallas nonetheless. And, I mean, I think they'll cover because I think 1 point is a massive overreaction to the Arizona game. Especially judging by the fact that they're playing Washington the next week, too. Like, if they were playing, like, I don't know, a good team, then this type of line movement really makes sense. But I don't think they're taking into account the opponent that they're playing. So, yeah. Let's go on to the next game, though. And now that I think about it, I actually forgot to talk about Tua Tagovailoa inserted into the starting lineup for the Miami Dolphins. Threw the ball twice last week. I mean, not much you can actually glean from that. But threw the ball twice last week. I'll talk about him real quick before I talk about this Bills game, I guess. I guess I'll just talk about my pre-draft eval, I guess. Maybe I'm a bit skeptical about it because of how good Mac Jones has been this year. With even, like, lesser weapons. I don't think they have I don't think they have the overall compilation of weapons that they had. But, I mean, Mac Jones, I don't think Mac Jones is actually a bad player, to be honest. Like, I think he might be an underrated as a prospect, maybe. He's making some pretty good throws, under pressure, accuracy. Now, I haven't looked too deep into him this year, actually, but from what I've seen and all the metrics, which isn't the main thing in all this, but all the metrics, he's actually pretty damn good in. So maybe he's not maybe he's actually underrated as a prospect. But even still, I am a bit skeptical about my analysis on Tua. And he didn't make those throws that Herbert made, those wild throws that Herbert or even Burrow made. Like, he had a lower amount of those than both of them. Like, he wasn't forced to throw the ball in tight windows. So to see that type of tape from him, like, he's a quick decision maker, a good decision maker. Like, most of the reason why I liked him is because the ball goes to the right place on time, like 90-something% of the time. And you might have a pretty odd situation, like a pretty odd decision in there. Like, he has Jimmy Garoppolo in that way. Like, that's kind of how Jimmy Garoppolo is. I think he might be a bit better than him, but at the same time, maybe not. I don't even know. Like, that could be who he is in the NFL, honestly. Like, he doesn't have any elite arm, which isn't the most important thing. I think that's highly overvalued. Like, yeah, you can make more throws, but I think being able to actually throw the ball accurately to wherever you, like, throw the ball accurately to the right person is more important than just being able to get to that person quicker when you actually throw the ball. And like, because, like, it does give you more margin for error. Like, you can be late and still get it there at a similar time and still be able to make the throw because you're gifted physically. But at the same time, that doesn't work all the time. So, yeah. Maybe I'm a bit concerned. I never thought he was this guy that was going to create out of structure or be this, like, because I think you're doing to have a pretty good ecosystem around him. But I think he is on the higher end of that scale, I guess, in terms of those guys that need to have a team sort of built around them. Like, I think he is really good. But yeah, and looking at him having to make some of those tight window throws, like I looked at him versus Clemson in 2000 and whatever when they played him in the national championship, when they played him against Trevor Lawrence. He made some pretty good, like, deep 10-yard out routes that were getting there on time, and, like, I don't think he has the best arm, but I think he does have enough. And yeah, but let's get on to the next game though. And now we have the Bills versus the Jets. The Bills are 13.5-point favorites coming into this game versus the New York Jets. Even after the Bills didn't actually play well for 2 weeks in a row, the look-ahead line moved. The line moved 3 points even still. And, I don't think it's unwarranted. I think it's mainly because the Jets are, like, actually that bad. Is Sam Darnold back? Because, Flacco, I don't know if I could take any more Flacco. Not like he'd be a massive upgrade. I think he's better than... just think he's better than Flacco, though. Yeah. Darnold, questionable for week number 7. Interesting. I hope he's back. I'd rather see him play this game than Flacco. Now on to the other team's quarterback, the most pulverizing player in Josh Allen. The most pulverizing player in the NFL in Josh Allen. Now, he's polarizing mainly because he actually is inconsistent, even from a throw-to-throw basis. Like last game against the Chiefs, he dropped some dimes that were dropped. Also missed some throws pretty wildly. The ball location overall is a huge downgrade from what it was earlier in the season. And it's more in line with what it's been for the rest of his career. So maybe that was a 4-game type of stretch outlier thing. And this is what Josh Allen is. And maybe he's somewhere in between both of those two medium. Because this was like, last game was like last year's Josh Allen. But I think, last game was like last year's Josh Allen. And for the first 4 weeks of the season, we've had a Josh Allen that looked different than the one we got this past week. Like, Josh Allen wasn't good. An adjusted completion percentage of 62.5. There was some pretty good throws in there. The one that got deflected was actually a really good ball, but also a really good play by the defender. He is a mixed bag of quarterback in a game. Like, he's not... I don't know. But this could be closer to the Josh Allen we had for the rest of his career. With that being said, 13 points would be hard to cover if it's full Josh Allen from last year. But the supporting cast is different and better. And I don't know. I really don't know what to think about them. I'm going to go with the Bills, of course. And I think we're going to go with them to cover the spread, too. Like I said, every team has a bad defense. The Bills' defense has been pretty bad this year. And the Bills' offense, the last 2 games, has been pretty bad as well. Like, they've lost, not lost, but they only scored like 23 combined points in the last 2 games against the Titans and Chiefs, who are by far the 2 best teams they've played all year. So, like, it looks like they might be one of those teams that beats good teams and loses to bad teams, and they might not be a truly elite team like they may have looked like in the start of the season when they were beating up on the Jets and the Bills. And the Dolphins and the Raiders. I don't think the Dolphins are that bad, but yeah. Bills win and cover, I think. Now, the Browns versus the Bengals. This game has already happened. Last time it happened was on Thursday Night Football, and the Browns came out on top and won the game. And a backdoor cover situation for the Bengals, who actually scored in the last possession and covered the 5.5. I think that game was at. This game is at 3.5, which is interesting. The Browns, I think, are like what I said the Bills are. Like, I think we already know that's what the Browns are. Like, they'll beat bad teams and they'll lose to the good ones. Like, they lost to the Ravens, they lost to the Steelers, and they beat all the bad teams they played. Yes, the Colts are not a good team. They're not bad, though. They're like average. But they beat them. And the Bengals just came off a loss to the Colts. And that's not going to affect my decision, because I was going to go with Cleveland anyway. But what the hell? Oh no. I was gonna go with the Browns anyway, because I think that what are the Bengals gonna do against the Browns? Actually, Myles Garrett's been playing like maybe the best edge rusher or best defensive player in general. Okay, never mind. He's not better than Aaron Donald still, but he's been playing really good this year. But at the same time, yeah, no, I'm going to go with I think the game probably goes similar to how it went last time they played, actually. Like, coming off of a game in which they didn't play week 2, did they? But coming off of a game in which you just got obliterated, and I think they'll look way better than they did against the Steelers. Like, I think they're in the same situation they were in week 1. They just got shell-shocked, and they're probably going to come back and... Yeah, it was. They played up against the Ravens, then they played up against Cincinnati, and he looked better again. Baker looked better against Cincinnati. And then he played up against Pittsburgh. He'll probably look better against Cincinnati because those 2 defenses are similar. You're going up against Cincinnati, and I think they'll be better against the Bengals than they were against the Ravens and Steelers. Because the Steelers and Ravens, I don't think they'll fundamentally break Baker like those 2 teams did. Though Baker already is probably just fundamentally broken. Like, some of the stuff he was doing from a decision-making standpoint and just seeing the field well, it didn't look good. It was awful. In case Keenum might actually be better in this offense than Baker is, because he's playing so poorly right now. And even though the stats aren't as bad as they were last year, he might be playing worse than he was last year, potentially. I don't know. He looks bad this year, though. But even all that being said, I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns to beat the Bengals. I just think they're a better team. Like, I think they'll beat up on bad teams and get smashed by good teams. Probably make the playoffs as a wild card team and then lose in round 1 because why wouldn't they? So, yeah, let's go on to the next game, though. Cardinals. Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints. Saints coming to this game as 7.5-point favorites coming off of a bye. Panthers coming off of a loss to the Bears that was starting off the season pretty damn hot. Now they're not so... it was only 1 game. Now they're not so hot. It was a bad performance. Damn. That was bad. I think there's only a certain amount of great performances. Not even great, because he hasn't been great, but... from Teddy Bridgewater. And I think they might have reached their limit. No, I'm just kidding. Not really, though. But right now they have Mike Davis on IR. Christian McCaffrey on IR. Or Mike Davis questionable. Which might make their team better. Might make their team better. Maybe. I mean, losing McCaffrey made their team better. Now, I don't know if they even have another running back on their roster. But, I mean, who cares? It doesn't really matter. But, okay, we have Breeze coming off of a bye week, coming off of some rest, resting up that old noodle he has on his right arm, and probably his left. And, I mean, he's looked better the last couple of games. So I expect that to continue against a pretty bad Panthers defense that hasn't actually performed too poorly, actually. But even still, it's not like it's been a world-beating defense. Like, I'd still say they're probably below average, but maybe a bit above that, actually. But yeah, I mean, in terms of EPA allowed, they're ranked 14th, which is interesting. I mean, sure, I don't think they're that good. I mean, they haven't played the best set of opposing offenses, though. I mean, they played Oakland. Well, they did play, maybe that's not true. They did play, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, Oakland, I mean, they actually have been really good offensively this year, so maybe I shouldn't talk shit about Oakland. It's offense, at least. I mean, let's look at the Panthers schedule. But, I mean, I don't think we've played a really tough schedule. I mean, you played the Bears, who aren't good offensively. I mean, the Bucs are, and they got lucky with 4 drop touchdowns against the Bucs. I don't think the Cardinals are an offensive juggernaut. The Chargers sucked on offense until they exploded versus the Bucs and Saints. And so the legit only good offense they played, the only legit good offense they played was the Bucs. I don't think the Cardinals were that good. I don't think the Bears are that good. Oh, they did play the Falcons, too. Never mind. Maybe that's not true. But they didn't even have Julio that game, did they? So, whatever. So, long story short, I'm going to go with the Saints. Do they cover that? I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah, I think they'll cover that as well, though. And I think the Saints, with this bye week, are going to get back Michael Thomas. And they've already Drew Brees has already showed improvement, if you will, from a 70-year-old. Already showed improvement during the year. He's already looked better than he did in weeks 1 and 2. Meaning, I don't know, I wouldn't say meaning, but getting Michael Thomas back will definitely help a lot more as well. So, yeah, and they also have Blake Griffin on IR, or not Blake Griffin, Blake Gilkin, the punter. I thought that was Blake Griffin for a second, man. Blake Griffin's always on IR, so it would have been really ironic if that Blake Griffin was on IR as well. Blake Griffin's great, though. I love Blake Griffin. Anyway, though, this isn't about basketball. I'm going to go with the Saints. Now we're on to the game that probably had the biggest line movement. I mean, the Dallas game moved 3.5, but the actual favorited team changed in this game from the Titans to the Steelers. And I'm not quite sure why. I mean, with this, because, wait, no, it didn't. They're still favored. I thought it changed. It must have changed back because the Steelers were favored at some point this year. At some point in the week. That's interesting. Oh no, on this one it says they're 1.5, 2.5 point favorites, and now I'm being showed that. Let me look at a different site because it looks like. Okay, so maybe I was wrong, but I'm not. I mean, it says. Fuck it, never mind. So it looks like the Titans are favored, which means that I'm probably gonna bet the Steelers because of the price. But I don't know for sure if they're a better team than the Titans. I mean, Ryan Tannehill's, for starters, way better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, that's a huge difference right there. That they're better at the most important position on the field, and he's better than Big Ben too. Like, Ryan Tannehill's been amazing this year and last year. Ryan Tannehill just might be good, and Adam Gase might have just been holding him down for like the past 10 years. is what we might be starting to find out. So, with that being said, and they still have Derrick Henry, who I wouldn't rely on him to go off for 200 yards a game, and I wouldn't keep giving him carries, banking that'll break a couple away. But you still have Derrick Henry, who has the potential to just have a random 10-yard per carry game. I wouldn't rely on it ever, but it's still possible. Like, this last game brung his per carry up from under 3 to 4.8. And that's what happened last year, too. The same damn thing happened, not last year, in 2018, where he was at like 3-point-something per carry, then had a 3-game stretch at the end of the year that boosted his numbers. But he hasn't been that efficient of a runner in the NFL as people might think he has been. Like, he has stretches of play where he's a beast, but he also has stretches that last longer where he's actually not good. And he was in one coming into this game. And he was in one in the beginning of last year till Tannehill came in. Now Tannehill's in the game. Tannehill's slinging. Tannehill looks good. I mean, Tannehill's a really good quarterback, I guess. Ever since he left Adam Gase, he's been really good. And I think he's better by a pretty wide margin than Big Ben this year, actually. But at the same time, I don't know. I think the Steelers might be a better overall roster at the same time, yeah. That's what I was going to say. I forgot what I was going to say. The Steelers are a better overall team, though I think Titans are better in the positions that matter. Quarterback. Oh, that might be it, actually, now that I think about it. Steelers have a better defense, but, I mean, even still, their defense is probably a bit overrated. And defense doesn't necessarily matter in today's NFL, as everyone scores points at will, and everyone's defense is trash. Now, the Steelers do things in terms of from a defensive front standpoint, which really confuses quarterbacks. It's confused the shit out of Baker, but they haven't been that good on defense this season, the whole season. Outside of a couple performances where they were amazing, but they weren't that good against the Giants. Like, Daniel Jones still had a pretty fine game. And then they also weren't really that great against the Jeff Driscoll Broncos either. Like, their defense is probably a tad bit overrated, and this team might actually be the best team they've played all season. Tannehill deals with pressure a bit better than Baker Mayfield does, but at the same time, he does hold on to the ball and take some sacks, arbitrarily, basically, and take sacks. That's kind of the biggest weakness of Ryan Tannehill. Like, he can throw the ball accurately, all this type of stuff, but he does take sacks at a higher rate than other quarterbacks do in the NFL. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was one of the highest quarterbacks in terms of pressure dropbacks that turned into sacks. Not this year, though, because he's been better at that. This year, he's actually one of the lowest percentage of pressure dropbacks to turn into sacks. Though over the course of his career, he has been one of the highest. Like, last year, he was third. In 2018, he was second. In 2017, did he even play that year? I don't think so. But you get the point. He's been historically bad at avoiding sacks. Except for this year. He's been really good at it. Which could be the area where the Steelers get the edge and then they don't have to do too much on offense because their offense is stifled. And I don't think Henry's going to have nearly as good of a game against the Steelers front as he had against the Titans front. This is an interesting game. This might be the best game of the week. Let me look at the rest of the schedule before I say that. But it's potentially the best game of the week. Like, I do think it's a really good game. So, I mean, yeah, I'm going to go with the Titans. I think the Titans, I'm going to go with the Titans to beat the Steelers. And they're going to be the lone undefeated team. But I can easily see it going the other way. That's interesting. I'll hold on that one. It's a tough game. It's interesting. I'll go with, as you know, this game is supposed to happen a while ago. I forgot who I picked then. I think I picked the Steelers then. I think I might change on that. I think I'm going to go with the Titans. I think I'm going to go with Tennessee to beat the Steelers. Now we have Kyler Murray versus Russell Wilson. Seahawks versus the Cardinals. Cardinals, I think they're the most overvalued team by the market right now. 3.5-point favorites against Seattle. I mean, granted, they could cover that or even win the game just because Seattle's games overall all the time are just so fucking weird. But, yeah, I think Seattle's a much better team in about every area. And do they get Jamal Adams back? Because he's been gone for a while. I don't think he massively improves their defense. Because the last game we seen him at least, or when we seen him against the Pats, he was actually pretty bad trying to cover Julian Edelman one-on-one. Like, that's one thing maybe we can scratch off the list that he's not that good at. Let me find the injury report, though. Oh, never mind. It's right here. So, I mean, let's see. If they get Jamal Adams back, it doesn't change my opinion on the game. Because I have the Seahawks anyway. But do you think they get him? He's questionable. Growing questionable. I mean, I think the Cardinals are still the most overrated team. Like, outside of, like, 2 plays, they were, like, not bottled up. But outside of 2 plays, they really weren't that damn good last week on offense. Like, I don't think their offense is that good in general. Like, it's okay. It's just so lateral, and I mean, they do attack vertically sometimes, but, like, Jesus, it's not a great offense, I don't think. Like, I think Kingsbury might be a tad overrated. Though, I do think he's pretty good. I think he is a tad bit overrated. Like, that offense isn't shit outside of Kyler Murray runs. So, because, like, their passing offense is pretty bad. I don't know. I'm going to go with the Seahawks, but because the Seahawks games are so weird, I could easily see the Cardinals. I mean, that's a great hedge by me there, hedging my bets. But I do think it can go both ways, actually. But I'm going to go with Seattle to cover because I just don't think the Cardinals are that good. Like, Kyler Murray threw the ball for 188 yards, and 140 of which came on 2 plays. Like, I don't think their defense. I don't think their offense is that good. Passing it, at least. I mean, their running offense has... I mean, that was still the best rushing performance they had all season from Kenyon Drake. And even that was kind of predicated on some breakaway runs. So, I mean, he had a better game than he did all season, but he had 5 breakaways for 142 yards. So outside of 5 carries where he had 142 yards, the baseline of him running was actually much worse than the actual finishing stat line. Because, hold up. That was the whole season. That's the whole season. Hold on. That was the whole season. This past week, he had 3 breakaway runs for 111 yards, which were 76.7% of his runs. He ran the ball a total of... Oh, shit. Hold on. He ran the ball a total of 20 times, 3 of which were breakaways, the rest of which was not great. I mean, their offense is so predicated on just that explosive play in a drive that I don't think they can hang drive for drive with the Seahawks offensively. So I'm going to go with Seattle. We have Drew Lock and his Broncos versus the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs coming into this game after beating the Buffalo Bills, and the Denver Broncos coming into this game after a win in Drew Lock's first game back up against the New England Patriots. Now they come into this game 9.5-point dogs to the Chiefs. I think I said that earlier anyway. Which was like the same line it was for the Pats. The Broncos fueled them to death. Though I might have said, like, Drew Lock was, like, bad. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he was not good either. So, at the same time, like, and you're probably not going to field goal the Chiefs to death. So, I mean, there's not too many ways in which they win this game. I mean, their defense is okay. I don't see too many scenarios in which this game is a win for the Broncos. I mean, Drew Lock, he doesn't create chunk plays. I was about to say he could create some chunk plays. He doesn't do that at a high rate. Like, he's actually one of the least accurate quarterbacks in terms of throwing the ball anything further than 9 yards in the air. But, I mean, hey, Drew Lock might be the most overrated player in the NFL. I don't know. I'll keep that take for later. Unless he proves me wrong. You know what? Go out there and prove me wrong. 30th in adjusted deep ball completion percentage. Last season, at least. I don't have the numbers on it. This season, he had the highest uncatchable pass because he doesn't actually fit the threshold for any of that stuff. But he had the highest uncatchable pass percentage in the 10 to 19 yard range, the intermediate range of the field last season. He barely threw deep. He wasn't good doing it when he did either. He had like an 8% completion rate, adjusted completion rate, when throwing deep. But he's just not that good he's not accurate at all, really. Like, he has good short area accuracy. Other than that, he's not accurate at all. But, yeah, I mean, this team is banged up as hell. They still managed to beat the Pats. I think the Chiefs are different and more explosive and just better and more consistent. Like, even on their bad days, they're better than the Pats were that game. So, I could actually envision a scenario in which they keep it close, cover the spread, but they don't win the game. Because it seems like every time the Chiefs play against a lesser team, they have a lesser creative game plan. And, you know, the Broncos are a lesser team. Now, they are a division rival, but they're not good either. So, I'm going to go with Kansas City to beat the Broncos, but I don't think they'll cover. I think the Broncos will end up keeping it maybe closer than expected. But I could easily see a scenario in which they blow them out because they can't put points up. The Broncos, that is. But on to the next game, though. Two teams that are in a similar situation. In a way, at least. Like, I wouldn't say they're in the exact same... Well, they were in the exact same situation at some point, I think. Those two teams actually being the... Those two teams being the Pats and the 49ers. The 49ers coming off of an embarrassing loss, came off of an embarrassing loss against the Dolphins, ended up bouncing back against the Rams. Pats did a similar thing against the Broncos with similar circumstances, like Jimmy G coming back from injury, Cam Newton and the entirety of the Patriots team coming off of like zero practice for the past 2 weeks. And they ended up losing to the Broncos. They come into this game as 2.5-point favorites. That line was at 5 points on the look ahead. Now it's at 5, and then it's at 2. Now it's at 2 points right now. And even though it was 1.5. No, I don't think that they're gonna bounce back like the 49ers did against the Rams the next week. But I do think it is pretty likely coming off of a week with practices, like coming off of actually practicing, they would be against the 49ers team. But the 49ers are actually, well, I think they're kind of overrated. Like I said, they only have beaten the Jets and the Giants, and then on top of that, the other team they beat is a team that's whose only wins came against the NFC East and the Rams. So I think both of those teams are overrated, but yeah, I think the Pats, like maybe, I mean, Cam is a volatile quarterback, and he showed that this season as he was pretty okay against the Dolphins, pretty great against the Seahawks. He was pretty bad against the Raiders and then bad against the Broncos. So it's been all over the map in terms of Cam Newton this season, getting good games or bad games from Cam Newton. It's been pretty over the map, all around the map for Cam Newton this season. And I mean, that's kind of just what you get with Cam Newton. It's just kind of the kind of quarterback he is. And I mean, Richard Sherman could be on his way back, which is a pretty big addition, as Fred Warner's playing amazingly right now. And I mean, Emmanuel Mosley was pretty good. Like, they were pretty banged up in their secondary and made it work and put together a pretty good performance against the Rams. Though that performance, I mean, you know, the Rams kind of beat themselves in a way with Cooper Kupp dropping some pretty big game-changing plays. Had a couple drops that would have actually changed the course of the game. But yeah, their coverage unit was pretty solid nonetheless. Now, a performance like that, I don't think is too sustainable to, keep making do with such damaged goods in the secondary. And Sherman's still on IR. I forgot he did have those injury setbacks last week. And now he's on IR till week number 10 is his expected return date, which is pretty big. Which might, I don't know if it's going to sway my decision because I was leaning. Actually, I didn't have any lean with this game, a matter of fact. But Richard Sherman's not coming back. I mean, Mostert's gone or doubtful. I mean, I don't think he's the biggest loss that they could suffer. Like, I think their running scheme is good enough to make any running back look kind of like viable. But, I mean, most running schemes are. So, that's kind of just like what running back is. And what's his name? The guy who's left, Jamal Hastings, or I think his first name is Jamal. I don't think he's pretty bad, and he's a pretty good scheme fit and just like stylistic fit for Shanahan and the outside zone, primarily outside zone running scheme. They do mix it up more than other teams do. Jamichael Hastings, my bad. So it looks like he might be the start. So it looks like that might be a sneaky fantasy option as I think Tevin Coleman, well, he was out coming into this week, but you have Mostert, who's doubtful, Jeff Wilson, questionable, and Tevin Coleman might actually be back now. So maybe Tevin Coleman on IR, expected to return week 7, which is actually this week, so he could actually come back, but it might not happen. So Jamichael Hasty, even still, if splitting carries those two, Tevin Coleman might get more of the receiving role. Hastings maybe more of the early downs, potentially. Or it could be vice versa if Kollmann even plays. Like, Jamichael Hastings might be a sneaky start for fantasy this week. Sneaky. But that being said, I might go with the Pats. Though they played pretty shitty last week, and Cam Newton probably wasn't even the best person throwing the football on his roster last week, but I think I'm going to go with the Patriots actually practicing and having a slight bit of a bounce-back game against the San Francisco 49ers. But now let's get on to the next game with the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chargers coming to this game as 7.5-point favorites. What the hell? That seems kind of lofty in my opinion, at least. Like, I don't know if they're 7.5 points better than the Jags, but Minshew hasn't been too good the last couple of weeks, so maybe there is some validity to that. And I was almost called Justin Jefferson, and he's been good too, but Justin Herbert's coming off of a 2-game stretch in which he was pretty good, and the team is pretty good, though that's not how he's been the whole season. Like, he's been encouraging throughout the whole season, but let's not sugarcoat it. The fact that the offense was still one of the worst in the NFL throughout his first couple of starts, so I don't think we should just throw that away and forget that ever happened. But the last 2 weeks against actual pretty good teams, he's been good, but that's why you don't rely on defense week to week. Because he's making these huge chunk plays, and he's kind of, like, I wouldn't say he's making these huge chunk plays, and he's really efficient from a touchdown standpoint. Well, maybe not that efficient, but he's been really good the past couple of weeks. And Minshew's been really bad the past couple of weeks. So if I was riding the hot hand, I'd definitely go with the Chargers because, I think I'm going to go with them anyway. I think they're a better Actually, I don't know. This might be my upset of the week here. Though the Chargers, I think, are a much better team, but I think the gap is closer than maybe people might think between the two teams. I mean, Keenan Allen, well, they hit a bye week, so actually they could be pretty damn healthy coming into this game. I think I'm going to go with the Chargers, but I don't think they'll cover that number because I think that's a bit wider than it should be. But at the same time, no, I think I'm going to go with the Chargers, but I don't think they'll cover that number because I think Minshew might have a better game than he typically has with the Chargers having some pretty key guys on not IR but Casey Hayward questionable for the game. Chris Harris on IR. We already know Derwin's on IR. Like, their whole secondary that I thought was really good coming into the season is injured right now. Meaning that their defense isn't that good. Which, Minshew could have a pretty good game. Even though the Lions' defense isn't that good and he didn't have a good game last week. So, you just really never know with Minshew. But I'm going to go with the Chargers. And I think that I think that Jacksonville will cover 7.5, plus 7.5. So, yeah. But let's get on to the next game, though. Chugging on along. We're almost done with we're on to the primetime games. Well, we already had one in the Thursday night game, but we're on to the primetime games, though, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Las Vegas Raiders in Vegas on Sunday Night Football. The Raiders are 3.5-point dogs, as high as 4.5-point dogs. I mean, I think they're a bit overrated. Though their offense has actually been pretty solid throughout the season, especially when Henry Ruggs is on the field. And though I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary has been good and is good, I don't think they have anyone to match the speed of Henry Ruggs. Because not too many teams do have someone that can match that type of speed. And Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis being cornerbacks in a bigger mold, I mean, they might struggle with Henry Ruggs, which might cause issues. Now, I think that the Bucs are just an overall better team offensively than the Raiders too, but especially when all their guys are healthy as well. They've dealt with injuries throughout the season to multiple different guys, like Mike Evans playing banged up, Chris Godwin being out. Like, they've had to fight through a ton of injuries. Right now, they're about as healthy as not as healthy as they're going to be, but right now, they don't have any key players out, minus, like, Vita Vea. And that's about it. Unless you want to call O.J. Howard a key player, but they don't even use him that much. So, I mean, this team just has so many weapons when healthy that I think they're going to win, because I still don't think the Raiders' defense is that good. Though, no, their defense isn't that good. Because, like, the Chiefs played a mad game against them and still dropped, like, 30. But, like, yeah, I don't think the Raiders' defense is that good. But the Bucs' defense is. But, like I said, defense is something you should rely on week to week. So, it could be, like, they could keep it close, but I don't know if they'll keep it. I don't know if they'll keep it there. I think that line is a bit not. I don't think that's what it should be, actually. I think that I think the Raiders are kind of overvalued right now. Though they are pretty good in certain areas, but I think they're overrated. I think they're overrated and overvalued right now. I mean, yeah. I'm going to go with the Bucs to cover as well. I think that line is a bit, like I said, I think that line is, I don't think that's, like, I think that they're better. I think they're more than 3.5 points better than the Raiders. So let's get on to the last game of the week, though. Rams versus the Bears. The Rams, coming into this game, 6-point favorites against the Bears. Rams coming off of a loss to the Niners. Bears coming off of a win versus the Panthers. And I think that the Rams are a bit overrated. I think that the Bears are way overrated. Though I don't think they're like a bad team, but like I think that 5-1 or whatever the hell they are isn't necessarily indicative of what they are. The Rams, on the other hand, who are like 4-2, I don't think that's really indicative of who they are either, they've only beat the NFC East. The two teams they've played outside of the NFC East, Bills, 49ers, in a way, they kind of had their way with them. I mean, maybe not the Bills because they ended up coming back, but like the Bills' defense has been pretty shit the whole season. Like in terms of EPA allowed, EPA per play allowed, like they're actually worse than the Cowboys defense in terms of EPA per play allowed. Like it's the Texans, the Jags, then the Bills are third in terms of EPA per play allowed on defense. Like they're actually not a good defense, but like I said, that doesn't matter from week to week. They still have the pieces to do it. Trey White, that might be it. But Trey White, he's really good. Levi Wallace, I guess. I think he's pretty good. Like, they have the pieces to do it, but they just haven't done it. Which I think the capability to put together good defensive performances is, I wouldn't say it's more important than actually doing it, because actually doing it is actually more important because you're actually doing it. But if you have the guys that are capable of putting together good defensive performances, then yeah. Remember when people were calling Trey White the second best corner or the best corner in the NFL? Seems like that died down real quick, man. That's crazy. I don't know why that ever happened. I mean, people really latch on to interceptions, which I wouldn't say don't matter, but they are way more, they're way less predictive than, well, nothing's really predictive with cornerback stats. Those fluctuate a lot. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make, actually. So people really latch on to those interception totals, and he doesn't have them, so people soured on Trey White. I never thought he was all that great compared to what people wanted to. I thought he was overrated relative to what people were saying about him. Like, okay, like, he's good, but like, let's calm down with that right quick. I'm not saying he's bad, but I'm saying where people, like, the platform people hoisted him up to, he was overrated relative to that. But yeah, okay, anyway. I mean, the Bills, Josh Allen, not the Bills. This is not about the Bills. This is about the Rams. I thought this was a Bills game. Oh, man. I thought I was previewing a Bills game because I started talking about Trey White. But, yeah, the Bills are capable of good defensive performances, though they haven't been good. The Rams, on the other hand, this is a Rams game. Jared Goff did not have his best game last week. And he's been pretty solid all year, or more than solid. He's been pretty good this year. He's been pretty underrated this season. Like, I don't think people are talking about him. Not even I don't think. People aren't talking about him. Though, I mean, he is really protected, but he is making some pretty good throws at times. Just not against the Niners. Like, he was fine versus, he was whatever. He wasn't that good versus the Niners. I mean, I think the Bears are overrated. I'm gonna go with the Rams, but I don't think they cover because I don't think the Bears are bad. I think they'll be able to hang tight. They can even win if you get a good Foles game, so teams like this are hard to predict. Teams with those volatile quarterbacks, hard to predict. But I'm going to go with the Rams. And that's the end of the podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy. We'll be back. I'll be back next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Mock draft coming soon after week 8. And, yeah, I'm out. Peace.